Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Yesterday, we discussed the issue of the formation of the National Transition Authority, whose primary purpose would be to implement the democratic reforms necessary to stop Zanu-PF rigging the elections and repeating the situation we've had these last 45 years. Zanu-PF remaining in power because it rigs elections. And we talked about some of the challenges that National Transition Authority would face in this being launched, and at what time may it realistically succeed. The imagery that we used was that borrowed from the tale of the mice having a meeting and one little mouse suggesting that we should put a bell on the cat so that when the cat is coming, we'll hear it and we'll have time to run away. And how all the other cats agreed on it until an older cat turned around and said, who is going to bell the cat? The moral of the story being that sometimes a solution that seems to be so straightforward is actually not that straightforward. As much as if you put the bell on the cat, it will work as a warning that the cat is coming. But who is going to put the bell on the cat? And so the same applies in our situation here, that as much as the GNU or the National Transition Authority can be formed and asked to implement the democratic reforms, who is going to get Zanu-PF to agree to give up power so that we form the National Transition Authority? Today, I want to focus on the issue of the imagery. Ben, what's your view on this issue?
Good day to you and good day to our viewers. Thank you for joining us. You know, Zimbabwe, it needs all the help it can get, be it through a GNU, a National Transition Authority. It's a noble idea. But like I said yesterday, one that cannot be implemented now, given the fact that ZANU-PF is an elected government, which means they are the cat. As things stand with how Zimbabwe is, our political system, they are the cat, they are the big boss. And we, the ordinary citizens, have been, reduced to become mice. So by virtue of them being elected, and being elected means, being elected by us, whether we like it or not, the fact that we participated in elections and they came out victorious, whether rigged or not, makes them the cat and gives them the power. So how do you then expect, this is where it comes to who's going to bell the cat, how then do you expect ZANU-PF to give away that? To just say, no, I'm fine with it. You can take away my power, or you can put the bell on me. It's not going to work that way. That is very unrealistic. The ZANU-PF, we all know, will not give up power, will not give up their advantage. So, as things stand, I think it would be naive for us to actually think that we can put the bell on the cat right now. Impossible.
I totally agree on that point. I think people need to appreciate the difference between the reality at the moment. And I agree that as much as we held elections in 2023, much as ZANU-PF blatantly rigged those elections, and both SADC and the AU have condemned the process as flawed. We people must appreciate that SADC could not do anything about it, could not deny ZANU-PF political legitimacy for two reasons. Number one, Chamisa and his Triple C friends participated in those elections. And they enticed their supporters to participate in their millions. Nearly 2 million Zimbabweans voted for Chamisa in those elections. And judging from the media interest, millions of Zimbabweans in the diaspora supported those elections. And the second reason is, even after SADC had condemned the election process, Chamisa's friends went on to take up their Gravitrans seats, and thus endorsing that the process was legitimate. SADC and the AU had no choice under those situations. So it is important to underline that point, that we have reduced our positions in terms of political power, giving ZANU-PF the excessive powers it has gained through rigged elections, making them the cat, and we the helpless mice. But that is because of our own doing. ZANU-PF should not be allowed to rig elections and get away with it. But if it rigs elections and get away with it, it gives them the extra powers. Because they are no longer accountable to the people. And so this imagery, I think, is correct in that regard. But it is also important to underline that it doesn't have to be that way. ZANU-PF does not have the power to rig elections and to get away with it. Then,
Yeah, I agree with you there to say, tables, are not supposed to be, the way we are seeing it right now, where, we are the mice and ZANU-PF is the cat. It should be the other way around. We are supposed to be the boss of the government that is elected. They should be working for us and not the other way around. But, what makes it this way? For me, I think as Zimbabweans, we really do not know that, having a meaningful say, having free, fair, and credible elections is our right. We do not realize that. Hence, you find we are willing to participate no matter how flawed a process is, to such an extent that SADC actually said that the election process does not measure up to to our own constitution, our holy grail as Zimbabweans. And you find for the past 25 years, we've been told over and over again, your elections don't make sense whatsoever. Your elections are below par. But funny enough, we still go on election after election after election. And with, by so doing, we have now created Zanu PF into this big bobcat. They gain a strength by election. Now they know no matter what, how much we rig, they will still come anyway. So you are now getting a situation where we are fueling the growth and the power that Zanu PF has on us and has, on the country. It is us, the people, that are doing this to ourselves. In short, we are perpetuating our own suffering by allowing ourselves to, engage in a meaningless process. And whilst doing that, we are making Zanu PF a democratic elected government. And once they have that in place, once they have that mandate, you can never then go to them and say, we want a a transitional government, or we need a GNU. How then do they accept when they know they can, have the whole pie? Because you're offering them half a pie. They own the pie now because we gave it to them. So in short, we are making Zanu PF more dangerous and more powerful as each election goes by.
I think the other most important point to note here is that the opposition leaders themselves know that the electoral process in Zimbabwe is flawed. Not only the SADC and the AU, the opposition leaders themselves know it. The text I'm showing at the bottom there is from a quotation from David Coulthard in his book, following the 2013 elections. He admits that the election process is so flawed, so illegal, that the only logical step is to withdraw. But he goes on to explain why the MDC leaders did not withdraw. Greed. They have managed to con their supporters to participate in these flawed elections because they were after the few seats that they know ZANU-PF was giving away to entice the opposition to participate. The problem, therefore, then goes back to the voters themselves. How can we be so naive and gullible that we are conned again and again to participate in these flawed elections? Because as long as we participate, we are giving ZANU-PF political legitimacy. We are making, as Ben was saying there, ZANU-PF the bobcat, and reducing ourselves to the status of mice. Here is a short clip, two short clips actually. One of them, Chamisa promising the people that he was going to win those elections and he was already preparing his cabinet.
Makorokoto Zimbabwe nokuti hakuna munhu anomira kana denga raronga plan. Denga raronga plan, denga harifo iri. Plani ya Mwari haifo iri. Ini ndatanga kugadzira cabinet There's no way we are not going to form a new cabinet. There's no way we are not going to have a celebration. There's no way we are not going to have an inauguration. Let's start preparing for our inauguration. Let's start preparing for our celebration.
Well, you are clearly lying there. Here is one of the very few occasions when Chamisa was taken to task for lying.
Ende patakasangana na Trump akatibvunza naye vakomana, mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
Serious questions were raised about your behaviour in Washington, D.C. You did see some senior people on Capitol Hill, some Congress people, but you also claimed that you'd seen Donald Trump. You claimed you had a conversation with him in which you said he asked you how much you needed to move the country forward. You told him $15 billion, and he said to you that he would provide the money if you won the election. That was not true, was it?
Sangana na Trump akatibvunza naye vakomana, mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
It was not true that you'd seen Donald Trump and that Donald Trump indicated to you that he would provide, if you won the election,
But
$15 billion.
All those statements were said by other people, not what I said.
Akasangana na Trump akatibvunza naye vakomana, mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
Well, no, because there is a video which shows you at a rally in January back home in Zimbabwe saying that Donald Trump had pretty much promised you $15 billion. To be clear, because some people in Zimbabwe are still confused, you're now telling me you did not meet Donald Trump.
We did not.
Well, that is the tragedy of Zimbabwe. We have here an individual who blatantly lies. And the tragedy here is compounded by the people themselves who believe such blatant lies, readily believed, are easily conned. In other words, we're talking earlier on of how, in terms of power, Zanu PF is the cat and the ordinary voter is the mouse. By being so naive and gullible, we, the people, have reduced ourselves to mice. Then,
You know, it's really sad that, you know, people have taken so long to catch the drift of what exactly is happening, you know, in our country. At every, you know, rally, you find, you know, the opposition are talking about the need for reforms, and here we have, you know, Colton's talking about, you know, the reforms that, you know, are needed and what is actually happening. You have guys like Tendai Biti who actually acknowledge that, you know, Zimbabwe has turned into a crime scene. You know, there is urgent need for us to fix a broken system. Only for them to turn around at election time and urge people to say, no, forget about those things that we were talking about. Let us go in our millions and go and vote. You know, they are just doing this for themselves. And you are right to mention, you know, SADC condemned our election. And that was an opportunity for us now to get out of this mess once again. But no, it is the same opposition that went and legitimized the process by them taking up seats and actually saying, there is nothing wrong with what, you know, the outcome. We won and they won what they've won. Let us all go. And then, you know, SADC, you know, they were made to look foolish at the end of the day. So you are finding that Zimbabwe itself is refusing help, you know, that is being given because of our opposition. And this is not the first time that they have done this. You know, it's quite unfortunate that some people still have that mentality to say, I will follow such and such a person until the donkeys or the cows come home. You will not get through to me as long as that person says whatever, I will gladly follow. Hence, they are giving away their ability as a human to have free will, free thinking. It's very, very sad that 45 years in after independence, we do not even have a meaningful say in who governs the country. Since independence, what the very essence that we fought for, we still have not got it. And we still continue to do the same thing over and over again. It's pathetic at the end of the day as well.
I totally agree with that. Well, the problem with Zimbabwe, if the truth be told, is we have got a completely skewed political system. ZANU-PF over the last 45 years since the country's independence has usurped the people's power. The people are no longer holding the ZANU-PF leaders to account. It's ZANU-PF leaders who are calling all the shots. This can be summarized graphically by saying that the politicians are wagging the people, the povo. The tail is wagging the dog. We can change the system by realizing, to start with, that as long as we keep on being so naive and gullible, we do everything that political leaders like Chamisa tells us to do. Doing pathetic things like participating in a flawed electoral process to give ZANU-PF legitimacy, the situation will never change. I do not think that there can be any meaningful reforms implemented by the National Transition Authority, even if it was formed tomorrow. Because as long as the people themselves do not appreciate what their power is, I think it will not take long before the dictatorship is back again. As long as we have got an electorate that feels they are nothing more than mice, and the ruling elite are the cats, nothing much will change. That is the tragedy of Zimbabwe. SADC and the AU did play their part in 2008 to 2013, in the sense that it was SADC who forced ZANU-PF to sign the global political agreement that gave rise to the GNU. But the opposition leaders, Changirai and company, sold out and failed to implement even one token reform. And by the same token, the ordinary citizens were not aware of what was going on during the GNU. And so they never pressured MDC, CCC, to implement reforms. And so in this particular instance, as long as people do not know what their power is, I think even if we were to be handed in a silver platter a healthy and functioning democratic system of government, it will not take long before we revert back to the chaotic autocracy that we see today. Ben, do you want to give your closing remarks?
In closing, I would agree with you there, to say, if we do not value, democracy or understand democracy and how it works, we cannot expect any meaningful change in Zimbabwe. And you are right to say whatever change that we get, we would soon undo. Because, if we are willing to settle for shambolic elections, meaningless elections, rigged elections, how low can we go? Yet this is the right of every citizen of Zimbabwe. Free, fair, and credible elections to elect those who will do our will, who will look after us, because we are the boss of them and not the other way around. When we do not understand democracy and how democracy works, we will soon undo anything that that will help us. It's the reality that we must face as Zimbabweans.
Thank you very much, Ben. So, in summary, as much as I would be the first one to admit that the political in power imbalance in Zimbabwe has reduced the people to helpless mice, I'll be also the first one to admit that this is a situation of our own making. We have made ourselves helpless by giving up our right to a meaningful vote. We have readily given that right so many times over the last 45 years. I think any meaningful change in Zimbabwe has got to start, that has to be the starting point, restoring the people's right to a meaningful vote. At the present moment, we have to accept we have a situation where Zanu PF leaders in particular have more power than the ordinary people, the masses. The politicians have more power than the people who are supposed to be accountable to. The tail is wagging the dog. That is our problem. Thank you very much, Ben. And thank you very much, those of you who were able to join us this evening. I hope you'll be able to do it again tomorrow. Same time, 7 o'clock UK time, 8 o'clock Zimbabwean time. While we try to explore the possibilities of this National Transition Authority, what it can achieve realistically. Thank you very much again, and have a good night.